Welcome back, listeners, to this week's episode of Smile Sessions. Today, I'm excited to take you back to February 2019, when I was planning Leo's baptism and faced with some unexpected challenges with the priest. Join me as I share the ups and downs of this journey, the significance of baptism in the Catholic faith, and how this experience shaped my perspective on my faith and community. Let's dive in. Having been born and raised Catholic, I felt it was important to raise Leo in the Catholic faith. My partner agreed, and we had decided the spring would be the ideal time since the weather would be nicer and Leo would be 9 months old, which was a great age in my opinion. Baptism is a significant and ancient ritual in Christianity, symbolizing purification, rebirth, and admission into the Christian faith. It's a powerful act that represents a believer's faith and commitment to following Jesus Christ. This ritual involves the use of water, which symbolizes cleansing and renewal. When someone is baptized, it signifies the washing away of sins and the start of a new life in Christ. It's like a spiritual rebirth, where the old self is left behind and a new, purified self emerges. The ceremony can vary between different Christian denominations. Some practice full immersion in water, while others sprinkle water on the person's forehead. Regardless of the method, the core meaning remains the same. It's an outward expression of an inward faith. Baptism is more than just a ritual. It's a profound act of obedience to Jesus' teachings. It publicly declares one's faith and symbolizes unity with Christ in his death, burial, and resurrection. Being baptized also means becoming part of the Christian community. It's a way of joining a larger family of believers who support and encourage each other in their faith journey. It was a cold day in February when I had gone over to my parents' house with Leo because they were going to watch him while I went to meet with the priest from my home parish. This was the church where I had all my sacraments done to date. I thought it would be a nice sentiment if my son was baptized in the same church that I was. So my meeting was scheduled for 4 o'clock, and I waited for the priest in the church basement hall. He was a new priest, so this was going to be my first time meeting with him. He came in and introduced himself, and he started to ask me the usual questions to get to know my family and Leo's information. When it came time to the question about my marriage certificate, I told him that we were not married in the church, but rather common law. This is where the conversation took a quick turn. He goes, "Oh, no problem at all. You can get married in the church and then you can do the baptism." I then proceeded to tell him that I was unable to get married again in the Catholic Church because I was divorced. He immediately responded and questioned why I didn't choose to get an annulment. For those of you who may not be familiar with this process, in order to obtain an annulment in the Catholic Church, certain conditions must be met to demonstrate that the marriage was not valid from the start. Here are a few key requirements. Both spouses must have been free to marry at the time of the wedding. Both individuals must have had the mental and emotional capacity to consent to the marriage. Each person must have freely given their consent to marry. The marriage must have been conducted in the presence of 2 witnesses and a church minister. Both parties must have intended to marry for life, be faithful, and be open to having children. Each person must have respected the other and had their best interests at heart. The annulment process involves several steps, including filing a petition, like baptismal certificates, marriage licenses, and divorce decrees, and undergoing an investigation by a church tribunal. I mean, not for anything. I just wanted to move on with my life. And I never had any intention of getting married. Again. I was always very open about this with my partner, and he never pushed the issue. Having gone through a divorce once really put marriage into a different perspective for me. I don't need a piece of paper to tell me I'm in a relationship, not to mention the cost involved in the process. I replied that the process was lengthy and costly. I followed that with saying that my partner and I would like to raise our child to be a good Catholic in the community, in which he responded with, "Are you ready for this? How can you raise your child to be a good Catholic when you aren't a good example?" I was floored by his response. I looked at him and I said, "Are you saying that I'm not a good Catholic because I'm divorced?" He said, "Yes." I said, "I can't believe that you view if a person is a good Catholic based on basically paying the church to file an annulment request." I said I would much rather put that money towards food for my family than to the church. He said it wouldn't cost that much. I responded, "If you think $5,000 isn't a lot of money, we certainly don't see eye to eye here. I already soaked enough into that marriage. I wasn't about to invest any more, and not for something that I didn't even care to do." I was infuriated with rage, and before I said anything that would have St. Peter send me packing downstairs, I refrained from telling him what was really on my mind. I told him the system is a joke and that I no longer had any intention of baptizing my son there, and I stormed out. I couldn't believe I was being judged by a priest. Aren't they supposed to be a man of God? There was no compassion, just the words of a businessman, another sour memory connected to the church. Back in the year 2000, when my grandmother was on her deathbed, we had reached out to the same church, requesting the priest come to the house to give her her final sacrament. Keep in mind, this was the same church that she went to since she had moved into the area. The priest asked who was going to pay for his cab ride. My mother said, "You're not going to come unless we pay your way." She said this woman has been a parishioner of your church for the last 30 plus years, and this is how she's treated in her final days? She said a few choice phrases that I will leave to your imagination before slamming the phone down. We ended up calling the church connected to my high school, and the priest came out to the house, no questions asked. I thought the role of the priest is to offer families comfort during an already difficult time. The perception that some priests act as though they are infallible and pass judgment on others can contribute to the Catholic Church's struggle to maintain attendance. This behavior can lead to feelings of alienation and dissatisfaction among parishioners, who may feel judged rather than supported, just like I did. Such experiences can drive individuals away from the church, seeking more inclusive and understanding communities. Since then, and for obvious reasons, I don't have the same calling to attend Mass. I like to go over to the church and pray at the Mother Mary statue, which is surrounded by the most beautiful flowers in the summertime. I often will go into the chapel and read through the books that they have on the shelves. It's always so interesting how what I read in that moment somehow connects to what's going on in my life. I have still found a way to remain connected to my faith, but just not in the traditional way. But it works for me, and that's my time with God. So following the church fiasco, I had gone to another church I attended many times for family occasions, and there were no issues at all. I walked into the office, I met with a lovely woman who asked me what date I wanted to book and the names of the parents and godparents. I was informed that both parents and godparents were to provide a copy of their baptismal certificate and to give a donation of $100 to the priest after the ceremony. It was the easiest process, and I was so thankful for a much more positive experience. We baptized Leo on April 28, 2019. We selected my sister and brother-in-law to baptize Leo. This was a very easy decision for us because they were such great parents. I always admired how wonderful of a mother my sister is, especially since we didn't have the best role model. When my nephew was born, it was like she was destined to be in this role. She was a different person, and she had it all together. She really made it look so easy, although she was always very honest with me about motherhood, which I appreciated because I had some of an idea of what to expect. I remember she told me prior to having Leo that the nighttime is always the hardest. I questioned her as to why, and she said it's a lonely time. Everyone is sleeping, and you're awake with the baby with no one to talk to. I was very lucky to be on maternity leave at the same time as my sister, because we were able to support one another during those difficult nights, and I'm forever grateful for those memories. It's quite remarkable how some people who have had difficult childhoods, including having challenging relationships with their mother, can become great parents themselves. Here are a few reasons why this might happen. Many individuals are motivated by a strong desire to provide their children with a better upbringing than they experienced. This determination can drive them to be more attentive, loving, and supportive parents. Experiencing poor parenting can serve as a powerful lesson in what not to do. These individuals often become very conscious of avoiding the behavior and attitudes that cause them pain. People who had difficult childhoods may seek out resources such as a parenting class, therapy, and support groups to learn effective parenting strategies and to heal from their own past trauma. Growing up in challenging circumstances can foster a deep sense of empathy and resilience. These qualities can help individuals connect with their children on a profound level and navigate the challenges of parenting with strength and compassion. Many people who have had tough childhoods understand the importance of a strong support network. They often build and rely on a community of friends, family, and professionals to help them in their parenting journey. It's inspiring to see how people can transform their difficult experiences into positive outcomes for their own families. I often mention this to my therapist that I struggle with being compassionate to my partner. I am aware that I lack compassion because when I sought compassion from my mother, instead she would reply with how whatever she is dealing with was worse. For example, if I felt sick, she always had what I had, but with more symptoms. I am very vocal to my partner that this is a struggle for me because I didn't have that behavior modeled for me. I do know that in order to give myself compassion, I must first learn how to be compassionate to myself. I am a work in progress, and if we are practicing compassion, then this is perfectly okay. Thank you for joining me on this week's episode of Smile Sessions. I hope my story about planning Leo's baptism and the challenges that I faced with the priest resonated with you. Remember, faith and community can take many forms, and it's important to find what works best for you. Stay connected to your beliefs and don't be afraid to seek out supportive and understanding communities. Until next time, keep smiling and stay positive.